In this demonstration, let's take a look at some ways that we can get to that underlying diagnostics data in the absence of Azure Log Analytics. Recall what we've done thus far. I'll take you directly into Monitor to begin with, and I'll search the filter list for Diag to get to diagnostic settings. If you're talking about not virtual machines or app service apps, which have their own diagnostic settings panels, for individual resources, you can either go to the individual resources themselves, or you can come into Azure Monitor to get a centralized view, and then make sure that you've enabled diagnostic streams for the resources that you want to enable for. And then as far as getting to the data, at the ground level, so to speak, you can use a tool like Azure Storage Explorer that you see here. I give you the download link for this in the exercise files. This is a free cross-platform desktop application from Microsoft that makes it easy to interact with your storage. And I've already authenticated into my subscription, and you notice from my previous demo, I created a centralized storage account for all of my different telemetry streams. Now, those streams will be stored in different locations depending upon what kind of stream it is. For instance, if you enable boot diagnostics on your virtual machines, then those snapshots will be stored in the blob service in a container called boot diagnostics VM name GUID. Boot diagnostics are bitmap files that show you the desktop status of a virtual machine. I've got one here for this machine. Let me open it up in the Photos application. I'm on a Windows 10 box. And this can serve as a sanity check to make sure that your VM state is not in a hung or disastrous condition. You'll notice, though, that the tables is where most of the metrics show up, specifically the metrics. Now, you see we have these dollar metrics tables. This is showing you the number of transactions per service. That can be useful for determining cost. But the WAD, this is for Windows virtual machines. And you're going to have, for instance, a table called WAD Performance Counters table that lists all of the performance metrics for that virtual machine. Or again, if you're using a centralized storage, it's going to be multiple virtual machines. And you can write queries directly from within this interface. You can cut down on the columns that you're seeing. There's likely a lot of columns that are not exactly that intuitive. Let's get to some that are more interesting. In fact, let's go to column options here, and I'm going to clear all and just try to grab role instance, which is the name of the machine, counter name, counter value, counter instance. Let's just select a few columns, and that gives us something a little bit easier to look at. This is raw data, and of course, you can export this directly from the Storage Explorer. It comes down as a comma-separated value file. Storage Explorer is a fantastic tool if you're not aware of it. I strongly suggest you download it. And like I said, if nothing else, it can give you some really great ground level access into your raw diagnostics logs. Let's come back to the portal, back into Azure Monitor. And this time, let's take a look at metrics and alerts. I'll go to metrics here. Now, you might have noticed earlier when we looked at virtual machine and app service diagnostics, you might have noticed that there was a metrics and alerts area there. Well, that's true. You'll find a lot of overlap in Azure Monitor at the resource level. But again, I want to repeat, what's powerful about Monitor is that it allows you to get to your resources from one single location, all right? So let me collapse the Monitor menu. And the interface here at first blush is a little intimidating. But basically, all we're doing here is it's dropping down this first filter for resource. And we filter down, first of all, by subscription, and then into a resource group, and then a type of resource. And again, what you can get to in here as far as metrics is limited only by your deployment and what you've enabled diagnostics logging for. I'm going to come down to virtual machine. Let me give it a click here. And eventually, I should be given the opportunity to select a virtual machine. Yep, I've got WinDemo 1 and WinDemo 2. I'm going to select WinDemo 2. Once we've selected that resource, it drops into a metric namespace. I'm going to choose not host level diagnostics, but guest level diagnostics. And so now we're tapping inside the virtual machine, and we can get down to, in this case, common performance monitor counters. What's the hello world example? Normally it's percent processor time, isn't it? And then we choose an aggregation here. It looks like there's average, min, max, and sum. Now, these are quiet virtual machines in my subscription, so we're not seeing anything particularly heavy. But the idea here is that you can plot those metrics and you can actually add more than one metric and then superimpose them. You can change the display between line, area bar, or scatter chart. And then check this out. You can pin that chart to the dashboard. If you open up the ellipsis menu, you can clone the chart to look at the analysis from another factor. You can edit it or you can delete it. Let me come back to the dashboard. This is a monitoring course, so I want to just briefly explain that these dashboards are exceptionally useful. You can always create new dashboards. I have a couple of them here in my list, as you see. And then when you right-click an empty area, you can edit and either pull out tiles from the tile gallery, or you can tap into your resources directly and add tiles, or you'll notice in Azure Monitor and in several other configuration blades, you'll see an Add to Dashboard option. So what I'm saying is you can build excellent monitoring dashboards here. And then what's even cooler, click Share. You can share these dashboards with other administrators or developers or architects in your organization. And as this blurb says, you can use role-based access control to determine who can get to the dashboards. Really sweet. And I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that if you weren't already. Let's come back to metrics. So the metrics allows you to plot the various charts. Up on the top here, you see export to Excel. This is useful. Any chart that's active on the metrics page here can come down as a full-on XLSX file that has the source data and the pretty picture associated with it. Alerts are the bookend to metrics. Alerts are something you absolutely want to be aware of. Let me present this to you this way. Let's go into action groups first so I can show you what that's all about. I've described this a little bit previously in the theory portion of this module, but let's walk through it. If we click Add Action Group, we're going to determine one or more actions that we take as a remediation. The reason why action groups are tracked separately in the portal is that you might put a lot of work into configuring one of these, and frankly, you may want to apply the same action group to more than one alert rule. I'll call this test action group. And I'm going to populate it in my demo resource group. Whoop, it didn't like my short name. Maximum 12 characters long. I'll call it tag 1. How's that? Now, the actions list, this is a multi-row table. So I'll call this first action notification. And then for type, notice the options here. We've got email, SMS, push, or voice, Azure function, logic app, webhook, ITSM integration, or automation runbook. So if I select email, SMS, push, or voice, we now specify who is the destination email address. This would likely be a group or shared mailbox address. You can email anybody who is associated with a particular resource manager role. You can do SMS and or push notifications. If you have, for instance, with SMS, Azure has a built-in integration with Twilio, among other providers for SMS messages. And then you could even do push notifications if you have an Azure notification hub up and online. So this is very rich notification. I mean, gone are the days where it's SMTP email or bust. As you can see now, you can do a lot of different options. I'm going to cancel out of there. I'm just showing you the ropes here. I don't necessarily need to complete this entire action group. Before we go on, though, I just want to show you that besides the notification, we then can come to a second row and we can configure code to run. Now, what you do here is going to be dependent upon your comfortability and what your colleagues are comfortable with, because each of these works a little bit differently. The Most basic way to do a code execution would be to send a webhook, which is a specialized HTTP reply. We can do an ITSM integration where we're creating a ticket using an ITSM connection solution. See this click out link here? You can get to a Docs article to learn how to configure the IT service management connector. And here, this action group step would create a ticket automatically in your solution. Otherwise, like I said, it depends upon your level of sophistication. You've got functions, which essentially is JavaScript or C# source code. Logic App, which could involve an integration of basically an entire workflow that you can design with JSON or just a visual editor. And then Automation Runbook is excellent. It's my favorite one, where you can run hosted PowerShell or Python scripts. Nice. So that's the action group. Let me close out of there. Let me show you about the alert, though. Let's step back in the breadcrumb navigation and go to New Alert Rule. You first choose the target. And let's choose the target now. You can set the target really high and have it go through an entire subscription or through an entire resource group, or you can be granular. I'm going to create one that is targeted. Well, let's just see. Let's just experiment. I'll select a subscription. I'll select my resource type. Let me scroll out a little bit here to get the drop down. There we go. Look at all the different assets we can select from. I'll come down to virtual machines. And then from there, like I said, you can select an individual machine or you can go at a higher level. I'm going to pick on WinDemo2, and you see that show up down below in the preview. You can create more than one target here. I just have one selected. You then define the criteria. The signal type is interesting here. You can, again, the drop downs are a little fussy. I have to be zoomed out to a particular level before Azure will display it properly. This is really annoying. Wow. It's still not doing it. Oh, well, this is live education. Azure sometimes acts a little weird, doesn't it? Notice that the signal type, if you look on the left side, kind of an orphaned menu, you have all metrics and activity log. Metrics, if I can select it, there we go, metrics. If you select metrics, you can choose individual metrics values, like percentage CPU. Let's click that for a moment. And then it gives you, first of all, a history where you can adjust the scaling of what you want to look at just to get a ballpark of what your threshold should be. And then you come down to your alert logic. Are you looking at greater than, less than, over? The aggregation is average, but you can do max, min, or total. And then threshold. And then you choose your evaluation based on your granularity. So this is defining what the condition or conditions are that will trigger the alert. Now I want to step back again to the alert criteria. The metrics, I think, are pretty intuitive, I found, through most administrators. You're used to doing that kind of thing. But what might not be so intuitive is the activity log option. Let me try to get in there. There we go. Activity log means that you can actually trigger an alert based on an administrative operation. You might need an alert and an action group to trigger when somebody, say, deletes a virtual machine. You see, you may have big service level agreement type stuff that this is riding on. So let me select this activity log alert. And then again, it gives you a run of how often that event happened. And then you determine the event level, the status, failed, succeeded, started, and even if it was initiated by a particular person. Got it? Now, there, at least as of this recording in fall 2018, you can only have one of those activity log alerts for your rule. You can do multiple metrics alerts. The alert details is just where you provide the rule name, the description, and then you give it an arbitrary severity level. You can choose to enable the rule upon creation or not, where you stage it. And then finally, you link up an action group down at the bottom. That's it. As a final step, I want to show you how we can visualize network security group flow logs with Power BI. I followed this particular tutorial that you're looking at now in the Azure documentation. Check the exercise files for the specific link. The way this works is you first have to enable Network Watcher in your target Azure region or regions. You can do this by navigating to the Network Watcher blade, expanding the regions within your target subscription, right-clicking and choosing Enable. Once you've done that, you can scroll on down to under Logs, NSG Flow Logs. And remember, the purpose here is that you want more detailed information on ingress and egress traffic into and out of your network security groups. Let's see, let me refresh my view. I think I've enabled them for one. Yes, I have, but let me quickly show you the workflow. Step one is obviously to enable flow logs for an NSG. We turn the status from off to on, and we have to configure a storage account. I'll choose the one that I've been centralizing all of my diagnostics into. And then your retention and whether or not you want to do more robust traffic analytics. If you do decide to go that route, then you'll be required to bind that telemetry stream to an OMS/log analytics workspace. Now, this visualizing network security group flow logs with Power BI article gives you a download link to a Power BI template. You want to install Power BI Desktop on your system. This is a free application. It has its own learning curve. I'll be the first to admit I'm not particularly skilled with it, so I'm going to fumble a bit. But I can at least get you there as far as completing this procedure. I've got the tool installed, and I'm going to do an open. And let's see here. I'm going to need to open my file extension filter. The template extension is not the latest, what's in the docs article, so you have to change the filter to all files, and you can get NSG Flow Log storage template.pbit. And it's going to ask for a storage account name and a number of log files. My storage account name is TW Cloud Shell, and the number of files you want to pull back is totally up to you. I doubt there's 50 in this particular storage account, but we'll see. Let's click load. And we're going to be asked to authenticate to that storage account. The authentication uses one of the two secret keys that Microsoft gives you to protect your storage account. So let's come back, and in the Azure portal, I'll just do a direct search for TW Cloud Shell. That is just a general purpose V2 storage account. And then under Settings, Access Keys, we can copy out key 1 or key 2. It doesn't matter which one. I'm going to click the key 1 value, paste that in here, and click Connect. And then if everything goes well, you'll get your visualization. Now, as I said, I am a newbie at Power BI, so I encourage you to check out this template and look at the information that it gives you. I've just randomly selected this, flows by destination port. So it looks like my network security group or groups that we're looking at here are communicating using non-standard ports. But as I said, you'll want to read the documentation, and we have at least one excellent course on Power BI in the Pluralsight library for you to get up to speed. Now, under the hood, the NSG Flow Logs are stored in the blob service of your destination storage account. Specifically, here we are in Azure Storage Explorer. You'll find a container called Insights Logs Network Security Group Flow Event, and you'll have to drill down through the long resource manager path down through your subscriptions, into your resource groups, into your providers, your network provider, your network security group, down to the individual NSG. And then even there, you walk down the namespace through dates, and eventually you'll get down to one or more JSON files. That's how the files are stored under the hood.